Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our guest today. Crystal Paine is coming to us from Tennessee. She is a wife, mom of 6, New York Times bestselling author, entrepreneur, and an incredible advocate for her son, David, who has Down syndrome. David was introduced to their family through the miracle of fostering and adoption. Crystal is well known for sharing useful and inspiring content on her Instagram channel, The Money Saving Mom. She is also a highly successful podcaster, having produced over 250 episodes on her own show, The Crystal Paine Show. Her podcast is dedicated to embrace life right where you are and take practical steps to get where you want to go. Crystal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on this show, and I feel like we have so much in common and so many of the same passions, and so it's just a real privilege to get to speak with you today.
Yes, we do. This is going to be a fun show to be able to record. So I would love, if you're open to it, to be able to start our show with talking about David, about your son. And so you have 6 children, 5 biological children that were already here in your home, in your family. And then David was introduced to your family in such a miraculous way. Would you be open to sharing David's story?
Yes. So we actually never set out to adopt, especially never to adopt a child with disabilities. That was honestly not on our radar. We have 3 older children. They are now 19, 16, and 14. And then we had 10 years of secondary infertility. And so we had gone through testing and weren't even candidates for IVF. And so then we grieved that loss. We really wanted to have more kids. And then just the door got open for foster care. And it wasn't something that we'd ever really considered, but some friends were fostering. So we just felt like, we've got room in our home, we've got room in our hearts, and why not? Let's say yes. And we went to the first meeting where they teach you and kind of share about foster care. And once we knew the needs in our area, we couldn't unsee the need. So we started in on that journey and ended up our very last week of our home study, when they were doing the final walkthrough, found out we were expecting, which was completely unexpected. And so we went ahead. We just felt like, okay, we've stepped through all of these doors. We're going to just go ahead with foster care. So we ended up bringing home a little boy from the NICU 4 weeks before our biological daughter was born. So in 2020, we had 2 newborns for 8.5 months. And then he reunified with his mom, which was a beautiful journey, also really brutal. But we've gotten to continue to be involved in his life, and that's just been a real gift. And so 3 months after then he went back to his mom, we got this phone call. In the middle of the day, my husband was out of town on a high school trip with one of our kids, and our other high schooler was also out of town on another trip. And so I was there with just our 2 younger children, and they said, this little boy has Down syndrome and he has a cleft lip. Would you guys be interested? And he was almost 8 months old at that time. And, I could barely get a hold of my husband because he's on this high school trip, but he just said, yes, let's say yes. And so I knew, okay, I was really scared. I was very, very scared to say yes to a lot of unknowns, especially when my husband wasn't even in town, but we said yes. And he showed up at our door in the middle of the night, and he had a feeding tube because he not only had a cleft lip, but also a cleft palate and had never learned how to suck. And so in the middle of the night, they dropped this little boy off, and he's extremely malnourished as well, which we didn't know. He could barely hold his head up at almost 8 months. And we also found out then he had been born at 27 weeks. So he was really tiny, in 0 to 3 month clothes. And I realized as soon as I saw him, I am completely in over my head. I don't know anything about feeding tubes. I really don't know anything about Down syndrome. I don't know anything about cleft lip, palate, and he's really sick. It's obvious. And I could just tell you story after story after story of the next few weeks of how, honestly, it was just really God opening up these doors and putting people in our path who knew the right person to connect us to. And he was able to get medical care and help, and we were able to get the training that we needed to do the things that we needed to do. He had a surgery within 3.5 weeks to have his cleft lip repaired, and we were just thrown into all of it. At that point, we were not planning to adopt him. We knew that there was a good chance his case was going to go to adoption, but we didn't feel like that was what we were being called to do. Some of our kids weren't really on board with that. And
Yeah.
so we had him in our home for 6 months, and he was supposed to be going to another foster family who was going to adopt him. And at the 6-month mark, when we were going to start making that transition, they had some reservations and just didn't feel at peace about it. And so that was completely out of left field for us, because we had always just been thinking we're taking care of him on behalf of another family who is going to be his forever family. And so when that door shut, it was, you know how when you just know, like you just know in your heart, like there's a reason he's in our home and our stories are intertwined. And I just cried and cried and cried because I couldn't imagine him going anywhere else. And in the foster care system, if you say no to adoption, they kind of he goes into a pool of, whoever would be willing to say yes to him. And I just couldn't even fathom him moving to that pool of some unknown family adopting him. And so it's just really neat to get to see the shift in all of our kids' hearts, my husband's heart, like within a 4-day period of everyone just being 150% on board with, he is supposed to be in our family forever. And so we said yes to adopting him. And honestly, it has been the biggest, greatest gift. And I think, the hardest yes, and also the best yes, because he has transformed our family. All of us are completely different people because of the honor of getting to walk with him and love him. And he's just taught us so much.
Is a beautiful, beautiful story. My heart just goes out to you for, number one, your path, or your willingness to follow a path of faith. And so, first off, with the first child that you fostered, and then find out that you're expecting and you have 2 little babies that are just happening right there, that is incredible. And then to be able to go and open your arms and your heart and your home to a child that has Down syndrome and has some pretty significant challenges in addition to Down syndrome is remarkable. Andrea and I were fortunate, in fact, somewhat of a similar path. We were fortunate to be foster parents with zero intention of adopting. We just wanted to help some kids to be able to reunite with their families. And we had these girls with us for 3 years before we actually were able to adopt them. And the first 2 years was under the idea of reunifying with their mother. And so it's interesting, the mental, where you're at mentally during that time when you don't plan on having them stay forever. It's just a different mindset. And then when that starts to shift, what an incredible journey, and your willingness to be able to answer that call to adopt a child with Down syndrome. So how old is David now?
So he will be 4 in July. And one thing I didn't say is 4 weeks after we said yes to adopting him, found out I was expecting again. So now he has a brother who is our caboose. And it's just been such a gift to see a sister who's 2.5 months older than him, and then a brother who is just about a little over a year younger than him. And so it's just so sweet to see the 3 of them together, and just how God writes the best stories. I could never dream to imagine, but God knew what he needed and what our family needed.
Well, and to take into account, was there a 10-year period of time where you were not able to bring a child into your home through having a child? And so amazing. 2 different times that if that doesn't have an act of faith in a divine and higher power, then I don't know what does. So incredible. Thank you for sharing that. How is David doing now?
He is doing so well. So when he came, they really didn't know what to expect, just because of he was so malnourished and because of just being born prematurely and all the odds that were stacked against him. But he is just an extremely determined child. That's the thing that we learned. Like, he's such a fighter. And so he has taught himself how to climb up the stairs, how to walk. And he was in therapy from very early on when he came into our home, and they weren't even working on crawling. And he just decided he wanted to start learning how to crawl. So he started trying to teach himself. He decided he wanted to start crawling up the stairs. He wanted to start walking. And so they were like, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to help you do this. And so he is almost running now, and he is learning to communicate. He still doesn't have really any words. There's a few that we're sort of thinking maybe he's saying, but he's learning how to communicate through other verbal cues, and we're working on sign language, and he just is thriving. He is the happiest, sweetest child. And, having raised multiple other children, I'm like, it's very rare for you to be able to say that your 3-year-old son is just the happiest, sweetest child, but he truly is. And he just loves this life. And that's the thing. I think he's taught us so much about how I feel like we live in a culture that has such an expectation of like this trajectory of success and what that looks like and what that means. And he's really taught us that success is it's a spectrum of different things. And so for him, the fact that he loves his life, he loves the people in his life, he feels so safe, and he's just so happy. Like, I'm just so grateful for that. And it's such a gift. And so, yes, he's in preschool 4 days a week, and he loves his teachers, and he's just learning every single week. He's learning. He is slowly able to eat more orally. We've worked really hard on that. He wasn't able to eat anything orally when he came, and he's now down to, he was at 6 feeds a day through the feeding tube, and he's now down to about 1.5 to 2.
Wonderful.
A day, and everything else is oral. And so he's doing really well.
Your children, you had mentioned that some of them were maybe not quite on board with adopting a child that has Down syndrome, essentially introducing a child with Down syndrome into their family. How has that evolved over the last number of years with those children and their relationship with David?
It's been so neat to just see. I feel like also for my husband, when he first, they first met, he was just kind of awkward around him because he made interesting noises. He didn't have any of his cleft lip repaired. So he was not this beautiful child to look at. His face looked different. And it was just this awkwardness of how do we interact, and he doesn't look you in the eye. And it's just been beautiful to watch that journey. And my husband will say how when he came into our home, we felt like he needed to be fixed, in a sense of like he needed surgery, and really our hearts were the ones that needed to be fixed. And we have really had surgery on our hearts, metaphorically, through him. And so our kids have just become the most passionate advocates of people who have disability. And whenever we're anywhere, if they see someone with Down syndrome, no matter what their age is, they're always like, "Mom, look, there's someone with Down syndrome." They get so excited, and we just are always looking and so excited to meet other families who have someone in their family who has Down syndrome. And it's like this special card that we've like, or this card, special plug, because it's just this gift to see my kids' hearts really be changed. And also for them to have lots of teens into our home and then teach them how to interact with David and help them to learn. And there are a lot of teenagers who have said, I've never been around someone who has Down syndrome, and so I don't know how to interact. And also they will very much call out anyone who is talking in a derogatory manner towards someone with disabilities. And so it's just been really just an amazing experience to see their hearts changed and to see them become such passionate advocates for those who have disabilities.
Absolutely. I like to call them unstoppable advocates. And it sounds like you have an entire tribe of unstoppable advocates that have experienced and seen the light of what I refer to as a special ability that individuals with disabilities have. And they've experienced that joy, and they've been converted to an unstoppable advocate. So I have to ask, your Instagram handle is The Money Saving Mom. And so I love the content that you are creating. It's a perfect mix between practical as well as fun and actually funny in a lot of ways. And so as you entered into this disability journey, so you're a planner. Clearly, you're a planner. You think ahead, and you've got not just a great meal plan, but you're probably way ahead as it relates to the future of your family, and whether that would be financially or spiritually or really anything, you have a plan. Introducing a child into your family that doesn't typically leave the nest at age 18 and go to college, and then fast forwarding even further, going down the road of life expectancy of a child with Down syndrome, oftentimes will push even into the 60s, into their 60s now, which most of the time will outlive their caregivers, their parents. And so that's a lot to take on. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, your professional background, as well as just something that you're passionate about, how has that evolved for you in your future planning and your planning for your family?
It's interesting because I feel like you kind of have to hold the tension of two things at once. You want to be wise and you want to be forward thinking. And so, just recently we were meeting about with some different professionals about like setting up a trust and thinking through our will and changing our will and all of that. There's a lot to think about, especially when you have a wide age range of children and a child with disabilities. But also having to just really hold all things loosely of we don't know what the
Yep.
future is going to hold. And so I think for me, it's just some of it is, yes, you want to be forward thinking. So putting money aside now, thinking of, the future, learning, educating ourselves, talking with people who are ahead of us, really befriending people who have adult children with disabilities and learning from them, but also holding our hands open of we don't know what the future is going to hold. And you can spend so much time stressing about it, worrying about it. You can get in your head about all the what ifs and unknowns, and you can miss today. And so I think there are days when I can go to, am I going to be changing diapers when he's 38 years old and still spoon feeding him? You go to those places, and then I have to be like, no, I'm going to live in today. I'm just going to be grateful for today and the gift of today. And I'm going to trust God with the future. And I can only live today. And I look back at so many unknowns that God has carried us through when I didn't know how we were going to make it through those things that we did. And so I can trust for the future as well. And so that's been, kind of just holding both of those of yes, planning, yes, being forward thinking, yes, learning and educating ourselves, but also just holding our hands open to, I want to just really embrace today and savor today and not miss the beauty of today because I'm so worried about the future.
Crystal, that is very, very good advice. That is advice that I needed to hear. And so thank you for sharing that, because that really hits home. My guess is for a lot of our listeners that they're going to find a lot of peace in that advice. Thank you for being willing to share that. I would love to, in fact, I'm going to share a little bit around these books that you have written, that you've authored. As I shared in the intro, you're a New York Times bestselling author. And from my count, I counted 12 different books that you have authored. Does that sound right?
I have 5 traditionally published books, and then I have some different journals and other things that I've done and some digital products as well. So I'm actually not even sure what the count is on all of them. Maybe it's 12. I'm not sure.
I would actually like to read some of these titles of the books that you have authored, and would love to be able to talk more about this. And so here's a few of these books that Crystal has authored. Love-Centered Parenting, the No-Fail Guide to Launching Your Kids. Time-Centered Mom. Say Goodbye to Survival Mode, 9 Simple Strategies to Stress Less, Sleep More, and Restore Your Passion for Life. The Money Saving Mom's Budget. Money Making Mom, How Every Mom Can Earn More and Make a Difference. And another one is A Thankful Heart is a Happy Heart. And that's one of the journals that you've created, a journal for kids. And so that's those are some deep topics. And those are topics that I think weigh on a lot of parents, whether their parent that's on the disability journey or just typical parents. I would love to hear how you got your start in this amazing business and this venture that you have created. Have you always been an entrepreneur?
I think so, because when I was 3 years old, I would want to have lemonade stands when we'd have yard sales. And I would always beg my mom, can I please have a lemonade stand? And then I would try to be strategic, from the time I remember when I was 5 years old, like thinking about the best way to set it up to sell the most. And so, yes, since the time I was young, I was constantly bringing ideas to my parents. Can I please try this business? Can I please try this? And so it wasn't really until I got married that I started an online business and tried a lot of different things. I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so when I found out I was expecting our first, really just started diving into the world of, back then there were Yahoo groups because we didn't have social
Yeah.
media. And so I learned a lot from other
Remember the
entrepreneurs
day.
on these Yahoo groups, and then started blogging. It was in 2004, 2005 when blogging was a brand new thing. And I just kind of was dipping my toe in the waters of it and really discovered that I loved it. And so tried a lot of different types of blogs and topics and things and learned about affiliate marketing, and then started moneysavingmom.com in 2007. And then that became our full-time thing that we did. By the time like 2008, we were earning a full-time income from it. And then my husband came home. He is an attorney by trade. He came home in 2014, and we've been running the business since then. And so really the books and the podcast and Instagram and all of that have just kind of come out of that heart for helping people live intentionally, and just really wanting to encourage people to live their best life and not just waste their life. I feel like there's so much where you can just kind of coast through your days. And I just want to challenge people to live their lives with intention, because we only get one life. And so that's really a lot of what I do, is just encouraging people to think of what's going to matter in 25 years from now. And let's wrap our time and our life and our energy around that.
That's something that I made note of as I really explored your model and went through your website. I too am a serial entrepreneur and just have a passion for building and growing businesses. But something that was special that stood out to me that just resonated so much with me is, go back to the early days of you were selling widgets in essence, or lemonade stands or whatever it may be, right? And as an entrepreneur, you've evolved to really have what I like to refer to as the business of heart. And what I look at when I look at your business, I see a profitable, good, scaling business, but it's a business that is helping people. And I like to call those businesses for-profit nonprofits in a way, because they really are living the best of both worlds. And so how did you evolve with that? And so I can see you getting caught up in a cause. You're very motivated to inspire and help people. What was it was that just inherent from your upbringing, or was there really something that helped you to guide that North Star towards helping people?
I think it's probably somewhat from my upbringing. My parents really modeled wise financial stewardship. And actually, when I was 7 years old, they paid off their house. And so I got to watch them kind of go through that process, and then saved up, and then we sold our house that we were living in and moved to this construction trailer on this land that they bought. And then my dad was a general contractor, and we built our house debt free. And so just really seeing my parents make these financial decisions that were very countercultural, but to see how it freed them up to be able to give generously and to be able to not have the stress of being strapped with all this debt. I just wanted to stand on their shoulders. And so my husband and I, we went into marriage really setting the goal that we were not going to ever have debt. And by the grace of God, we've never had debt. And so I know that that's not, not everyone can be in that situation. We were really blessed to have that foundation of wise financial stewardship for our parents. But I hope that my story can be an inspiration to others that, what example you set for your kids. They really are paying attention, and so much more is caught than taught. And so I feel like my parents investing that in me and walking that out before me was really what inspired me with starting Money Saving Mom, and really wanting to live simply so we can give generously, and then being able to just start sharing that message with the world. And then from that, I feel like kind of some of the other messages have come from that. And I'm just really humbled to have the platform to be able to share these things and to encourage people and to give them just ideas of ways that maybe they can shift their thinking or tweak some of their actions and practices to help them to have more freedom and not live in such bondage of this is the only way. Because I think we live in a culture that really says you have to have debt, you have to have school loans, you have to have a car payment, you have to, it's assumed that you're going to have all of those things. And so really challenging people, let's think outside the box. Do you have to? And can we change the way that we approach things? Could you live differently? Could you make some significant sacrifices in the short term to get into a different place financially long term? And so that's really my heartbeat for that. And ultimately, though, it's not about just helping people get in a better financial place, but really to challenge them. Okay, when you get into a better financial place, what are you going to do with that? Because I want
right.
to encourage people, to really live intentionally so that they can give generously. And that is my biggest heartbeat.
Well, something that, a personal question, but I do feel inspired to ask this. How much do you feel that there was a connection of your willingness to be a wise steward throughout your marriage and be in a good place financially? How much did that allow you and empower you to answer the call to adopt David?
I see so much the connection there. And I think of just being in the financial position that we weren't having to worry about money because, when you bring in a child who has a lot of needs and medical needs, there are just going to be a lot of additional costs, and especially as you think long term, but then also having the flexibility in our schedule. To be in a
That's
position
right.
where my husband be working from home and both of us having our own business and working from home has really allowed us to have that wiggle room in our schedule to be able to go to all the therapies and the doctor's appointments and sometimes have to make that really unexpected ER trip or the hospital stay.
Right.
And so I see how, all along we didn't know what all of this was preparing us for. And so I think, you never know these little decisions that you're making. I think of the first years of our marriage and those little sacrifices that we were making again and again and again. You never knew how that was going to be laying the foundation for the future and for the ability to be able to say yes to this little boy. And so I just think that that's one of the things that I want to encourage people with is that it gives you the freedom to be able to say yes to some of these things that you're really passionate about and that you never know you're going to be passionate about in the future by making those choices in the moment that might be really hard. And it might feel like, well, everybody else is doing this and
Yeah.
everybody else is going out to lunch and I'm bringing peanut butter and jelly every day, or everybody else is going out to eat and here we're eating at home again, or everybody else is getting coffee and we're making it at home, but again and again and again, making those decisions, it really adds up to seeing the fruit from it, to be in a place to have a lot more freedom to just be able to live and give more generously.
Yeah. Well, that's something that is very apparent in your content that you create is that it's the financial side of things is oftentimes just a mindset, as you say. And so it's not a matter of going and scoring this great job that's going to pay you so well so you can live an elaborate life. It's more about stewardship and the idea that you just shared of, you know what, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is going to do just as good as that $20 lunch that you're going to go to every single day. And it's being a steward of that, which ultimately enables you to be an instrument for good. It ultimately allows you to be a great steward for good with those resources that you've been entrusted. And that doesn't just come from large financial windfall, but it's more so coming from being a good steward. I'll share when I grew up, in fact, this is super personal, but it is what it is. And I just feel inclined to share this. My parents actually got divorced when I was 16. And a large part of the challenge within my parents' marriage actually stemmed from finances. It stemmed from finances. I do recall late night arguments about money. And I remember, and this is, again, no fault to their own. This is generational, right? This oftentimes comes from generations. But I oftentimes remember growing up when we would have a car, or we'd want to purchase a car or a TV or whatever it was never about how much it costs. It was about what is our payment, right? Can we afford the payment? And anytime we paid something off and there was a payment that was paid off, then that freed up more money to go get another payment. And what can we buy for this particular amount of money? And that was really how my mindset was up until the moment that I met and married my amazing, beautiful wife, Andrea. And I remember talking to Andrea when we were engaged and we started to talk about money. And in fact, this was even before we were engaged. She was probably testing me more than anything. But I remember her talking about the amount of money that she saved. She had saved for college, that her parents as well had never gone into debt. Her parents never were wealthy in the sense of making a lot of money. They were just incredible stewards. And for the first time in my life, I saw a different mindset. It was just a mindset thing. They had more money than anybody else. They just had a different mindset. And so that resonates so much with me on what you shared, because fortunately we've been able to adapt and adopt Andrea's principles and not Brady's principles of money management for our almost 22 years of marriage. So thank you for sharing that. That's something I'm very passionate about. And I do genuinely in my heart of hearts believe that the good that we can do in this world really starts with a firm foundation and being a good steward of those resources that we've been entrusted. And when I say resources, it's not just money, it's time, talent, it's energy, in being a good steward of that. So beautiful. Very well said. Thank you for sharing that. One final question that I wanted to talk to you about before we wrap up. In our preparation for this podcast, you had shared with me something in an email that I want to share with our listeners. I had asked you, what's one thing that you wish or that you want the world to know about David? And you had shared that if you are patient and willing to spend time with him, even if it feels awkward, you will discover and learn so much and be so blessed. He is a gift. Don't turn away because it feels awkward or uncomfortable to know how to interact. Could you elaborate more about that? What a beautiful sentiment.
I think of how many missed opportunities I've had over my lifetime because it felt awkward. And I think of not only maybe someone who has disabilities, but also just someone who maybe they're just difficult to love or difficult to have a conversation with. And everyone is wanting someone to just show them that they have value and that they have worth. And so my heart is really to look into people's eyes and to just really speak value to them. And I think especially with David, it's taught me so much about how he is paying attention, even if he's not making eye contact, even if he's acting like he's not interacting with you or paying attention, he is. And how then, if you take the time to really just, be patient, like I said, and talk with him and interact with him over time, like he really develops a bond with you. And the people that have done that, he just loves them so much, and he'll go up to them and he'll want them to hug him and he'll even give kisses. And it's just the sweetest thing. And his smile that lights up the room. And it's just really challenged me to go outside of my way to look for those people who maybe aren't, they're on the fringes, or they're someone that they're not easy to talk to, or it might feel awkward, and just push through the awkward, because that's how you get to the awesome. And so I have just learned so much from him in that. And I just really want to challenge people. If it feels awkward, that's okay. Like just
Right.
keep showing up. And I think it's so easy when we see someone who maybe, they have a trach or they're in a wheelchair or it's something like that. And we look in a way that's more a staring. And I just really challenge people, look with a look of love, because so often I've seen it with David that they're definitely looking at him because he's making interesting noises or acting in an interesting way, but they're not looking as in like, I see you. And I think so many parents who have children with disabilities, they oftentimes are just so used to people looking and looking away. And I just really always try to look into their eyes and just smile a genuine smile, just like I would if their children were typical, and to just speak value to them. Like, I see you. I value you and I'm with you in this. And, if you don't know what to say, if you don't know what to do, just going up and saying hi. Like you could just say hi. Maybe the child or the person is not able to verbally speak, but you can always just say hi. You can say, I love your dress, or I love your shirt. You can say something to them that's not asking a question, and just to show them that you care and that you see them and that they have value.
Underneath the awkwardness, underneath the disability exists a superpower, a special ability. And I believe wholeheartedly that the world says that these kids and these individuals need the world much more than we need them. And I think it's completely the opposite, that underneath that uniqueness exists a superpower, and we need these individuals far more than they need us. And so, Crystal, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.